Be strong.
Kim wakes up and sees a group of people gathered nearby. Kim asks Lee what is going on. Lee tells him that someone has entered this world through the portal in Korea. Kim is surprised to hear that. Ji-hai calls Kim and Kim goes there and sees that someone has been badly injured. Kim recognizes that he is Minseob Young. Kim asks him what happened and Young tells Kim that he must not come back. After some time, Young dies. Ji-hai asks what on earth happened. She asks if the people who are left behind are fighting amongst themselves. Ren says that they told her Korea doesn't have an absolute throne, and Lee says that is right. Ren says if a country is without something like the absolute throne that grants someone absolute power, there is often a shift of power between competing groups. Kim thinks that it is still early in the scenario, and there are people like Sanga, Huiwen, and his mother in Seoul right now, so something like that could never happen. Yu says that nothing is certain until they see it for themselves. The system notifies that the additional rewards for the main contributors have arrived, and the main contributors are Dokja, Kim, and Yu. Additional rewards are a Moon Wave folded fan, Blue Dragon Sword, Magic King Bracelet, and one grade skill of their choice. A portal opens up, and the people of Peaceland are waving goodbye. Kim picked the last option and obtained the skill of miniaturization. The dokkaebi appears in the sky and says now it is time to head home. Small people are cheering for Kim and saying their goodbyes. Kim looks back and sees Kyrgios. Ren says that she thinks Kyrgios is thanking him. She smiles and tells Kim that she hopes to see him again. Michio tells Kim that they will meet again as they go into the portal. Kim tells everyone that they should go too. Kim passes through the portal and thinks that it must be Seoul. Yu also appears from the portal and tells Kim to move. Some bombs are flying towards them, and there is a huge blast. Kim and Yu jump back. Someone says from the top of the building that it is the Supreme King, don't panic and open fire, attack the King of No Killing, and leave the Supreme King alone. Some people start attacking Kim, and Kim wonders when they get their hands on such information. Someone tells Kim to sheath his weapon slowly and come with them. Kim grabs his sword and says that they must have the wrong intel about him, so let him correct them. Kim activates the Blade of Faith and attacks using his sword. He cuts off the heads of some people. A person says that he thought Kim was the King of No Killing. This isn't what they told them was going to happen. A person rushes towards Kim and Kim cuts him to pieces. A man says that he didn't think he would be this strong. Everyone starts running. Yu tells Kim that he is too slow while wiping blood from his sword. Kim sees that Yu has killed many people, and a person says that he was told that the Supreme King would stay out of it. Kim asks who put them up to this. The boy starts attacking Kim and says that it is for humanity's liberation from the scenarios, and Kim is shocked to hear that. Yu cuts the boy's head and asks Kim why he is staring at him like an idiot. Kim asks Yu if he finds it strange. Yu says that he is quite loyal, which is strange. Yu looks at someone running and tells Kim that one person ran off while he was taking his sweet time to deal with them. At night, Kim and Yu are running together. Kim asks him if he is going to keep following him around like this and asks if Yu is looking for a chance to hit him. Yu says that reminds him he did say something like that. Kim says that it is strange that a hunting scenario should be in progress right now. It seems like it might be different from the hunting they were thinking about. Kim looks at some dead bodies and says that these wounds weren't made by beasts, but were caused by firearms and explosives. Yu says that people did this. Yu spots someone running, and he's about to kill him when an arrow hits him, and he falls to the ground. Ji-won tells one of his followers to finish him, and Kim starts running towards her and tells her to wait. Ji-won is surprised to see Kim. Kim is surprised to hear from her that the king's faction has been disbanded. She tells him that the one-eyed Maitreya was the first one to go, and then the King of Wanderers. Kim asks if she is dead. Ji-won says that they don't know whether she's dead or alive, but she's missing in action. And as for Il-do-jian, the neutral king, he's switched over to their side. Kim thinks that if Mother was defeated, then the fates of Sanga and Huiwen would be unknown. Kim asks about the people they saw earlier. Ji-won says that it is a new group called the Salvation Church. Kim and Yu are surprised to hear that. Kim thinks that earlier, the Salvation Church appears in the 11th scenario. Ji-won tells him that the Salvation Church appeared the very day they left. They said that they would save humanity from scenarios, and they are killing all the groups who are against them. Yu asks where was such a powerful group hiding. He was sure that all the major groups of Seoul had gathered together when the sixth scenario started. Ji-won says they weren't in Seoul to begin with. Everyone is surprised to see the stars in the sky, and the system notifies them that they have entered a new scenario zone. The seventh main scenario is currently in progress in the Seoul Dome. Yu says it looked like it was already time for new players to enter the scenario. Many new people appeared out of nowhere in Seoul. Yu asks if the Salvation Church members also appeared like that. Ji-won says that is right. Yu says that it is hard to believe people who were just summoned have no chance in a fight against seasoned incarnations. Ji-won says that the leader of the Salvation Church was quite strong. She tells Yu that he is very powerful, but he shouldn't fight against them, either because they have surpassed human boundaries both in terms of strength and intelligence. Ji-won says that it was as if they weren't human. The dokkaebi appears in the sky and tells everyone not to be alarmed and to listen carefully. Those who have been summoned here are just like sheep without a shepherd, so they have to find a group who is willing to protect them. A group that can keep them safe until they become an upstanding incarnation. The people tell the dokkaebi to get lost if he's done talking because they already know that. Kim thinks that there are prophets outside the Seoul Dome, and a lot of information must have been released due to incarnations who have internet skills. A person says that they need to join the Supreme King's group. Yu is annoyed to hear that Kim thinks that they are on their way to an early grave. Another one says that the King of Beauty is the most generous. She's weak, but they say she's smoking hot. Ji-won is embarrassed to hear that a person calls them idiots and says that it is neither the King of Beauty nor the Supreme King that they should be after. He heard that a guy called the King of No Killing was the best. There was also a rumor that the King of Beauty and the Supreme King were working for him. He says that he doesn't know his name, but heard that they just had to look for the ugliest king out there. Kim is disappointed to hear that and thinks that this is what he gets for destroying the absolute throne for them. Suddenly, someone blows a horn, and Ji-won says that they have to run. Someone says that everyone here has been made puppets of the scenario of higher beings, and a lot of elephants start marching in the streets. Ji-won says that it is the Salvation Church. Yu says that he didn't expect that they would follow him to this round too. Kim asks if he knows them, and Yu says he knows one of them. Kim thinks that it is too early for them to share the story. Someone is sitting on the elephant, and he speaks from behind a curtain. He tells the young incarnations to join the Salvation Church. He says that they will liberate them from scenarios. Kim thinks that this must mean that someone is interfering in the story to create a future that's different from the one he knows, and that someone must be powerful. A person asks if he will be able to become stronger by joining the Salvation Church, and the one sitting on the elephant asks what he thinks it means to be strong, and the person replies that being able to use a powerful skill. A large hand appears from the top of the elephant. The system notifies that the constellation prisoner of the golden headband is expressing animosity towards the palm. The voice comes from the top of the elephant. He says that they seek such vain things. How strong or weak they are is all but an illusion. He comes out from behind the curtain. He has golden hair and is wearing green and golden clothes. He says that the scenarios have pulled the wool over their eyes. He asks who it was that urged them to become stronger and why it is that they want to become stronger in the first place. The man replies that they need to become stronger in order to survive. The one with the golden hair asks if they keep striving to become stronger at every moment and what meaning life has. The person starts crying, and the one on the elephant jumps down and wipes the ear from his face and says don't let yourself be consumed by the scenario, and don't be fooled by the promise of salvation that awaits them in the next life. Their salvation is here, and this is where they are meant to be. Yu says that he hasn't changed at all, and he still recruits his suicide squad with his ridiculous lectures. Yu tells him to stop what he is doing and get lost. The person with yellow hair is surprised to see Yu, and he starts floating in the air. He excitedly asks Yu if he has any idea how hard he looks for him. Kim thinks that they are too dangerous and that he doesn't have anything planned for an encounter like this. Kim activates the personal skill character profile, but the system notifies that there is too much information about this character. Kim activates the character summary, and the system notifies Kim that there's too much information about the character. Kim is shocked to see that. He tells the system to just show him his first attribute. A screen appears in front of him and says that his name is Nirvana Mobius. Kim thinks that this person is the personification of the third way to survive the apocalypse, Nirvana, the reincarnation. A human who is not a human, they don't think like regular human beings. Kim thinks that he can't take advantage of them like he did with others. Nirvana starts laughing and tells Yu to become one with him. Yu is annoyed to hear that. Nirvana remembers the first time he opened his eyes in this world. He was a diving beetle and was eaten by a frog the moment he opened his eyes. Next, he was born a frog and was eaten by a rattlesnake. In his next life, he became a rattlesnake so that he could eat a frog, and in that life, he was eaten by an anaconda, and he was born as an anaconda in his next life to eat all the snakes. Eventually, he evolved into a powerful monster, and then came the day when he was almost hunted by the incarnation. Yu tended to his wounds and released him back into the forest. In his next life, he was born a human. Since then, he learned of the existence of powerful beings called constellations, lived numerous lives, and died countless deaths. He was the only one to reincarnate with the memories of his past life intact, but it was dreadfully lonely being this special. He was caught in the wheel of time. Then, one day, he met Yu, the only one who could understand him in this vast universe. He failed in his past life, but this time it will be different. Nirvana tells Yu to become one with him. Yu tells him to shut his trap and get out of his way before he kills him. Nirvana starts smiling and thinks that Yu is pretending to be rude to him, but he wants him more than anyone else. He tells Yu that he will help him. Nirvana asks Yu if he forgets how he failed in his previous lives. He tells Yu that he is the only person who can understand him in this eternal cycle of life. Yu tells him that he doesn't need him. He looks at Kim and tells Nirvana that he has a companion. Kim is surprised to hear that. Nirvana is shocked and asks what he just said. The system notifies that the constellation demonic judge of fire is looking around after hurriedly making an entrance, and the constellation secretive plotter is giggling and explaining what just happened. Kim asks Yu what the hell he is saying. Yu says that he wasn't talking about him, to be exact. The system notifies that the constellation demonic judge of fire is excited by this love triangle, and the demonic judge of fire has gifted them 2,000 coins. Kim grabs his head and thinks that something is terribly wrong. Nirvana is furious and asks Kim why not him. He asks Kim how he could become one with someone other than himself. Kim whispers in Yu's ear to hurry up and tell Nirvana that he likes him too, but Kim says no. Nirvana says they don't dare whisper in front of him. Yu shouts that he is not interested in men. The system notifies that the constellation demonic judge of fire is coughing blood, and he has been gifted 2,000 coins. Nirvana says that he is not a man, but he is not a woman either. Kim thinks that it is such a mess. Kim tells Yu that they like him, and that they could end up being useful later down the line, and that one is very dangerous. Kim thinks that if his guess is right, then Nirvana should be as powerful as Yu right now, but with the members of the church on their side, there's no telling if they would be able to beat them. Nirvana lost their sense of reason. Kim puts his hand up and tells Nirvana that there's a misunderstanding. They have no intention of going up against the Salvation Church. He says that Yu is just not great with words. Kim tells Nirvana that they were thinking about joining their cause. Nirvana asks Yu if it's true, and Yu replies that it is a load of crap. Kim is startled to hear that and tells Nirvana to wait. Nirvana is furious and says that they can both burn in hell. He rushes to attack them. Kim grabs his sword and activates the skill bookmark. The system notifies Kim that his bookmark skill is currently being updated. Old bookmarks are being replaced by new bookmarks. The system notifies Kim that there are 5 minutes remaining until the bookmark replacement is complete. Kim wonders why now of all times. Dokja is notified that his bookmark skills are currently being updated and his old remarks are being replaced with new ones. 5 minutes remain until bookmark replacement is complete, and he is shocked at why it is happening. They are already right in front of him and are so fast, as if they have used the Way of the Wind skill. Soon he realizes they are really using the Way of the Wind, and he is about to attack when Young-hyuk appears and asks him to move away. He uses his sword and breaks the Way of the Wind's pattern. The barrier slashes in just one blow, but Nirvana appears from behind, saying they both have a wonderful friendship and putting his ally before himself. Young-hyuk worriedly asks Dokja to step back, but Nirvana appears from behind and says his friend will die. A notification there says Nirvana Mobius has used the Stigma, Eternal Nightmare level 8. He grabs Young-hyuk by the head, and Dokja is worried about the skill, and thinks it's like the skill that the boss of the theater dungeon simulation used. But this is now happening at an even higher level, while Young-hyuk tries to ask him to run away. Dokja knows that the target of this skill ends up living eternally in prison, made up of their most traumatic memory. Young-hyuk will have an eternal nightmare while Nirvana comes to Dokja and says he will see him off to the netherworld himself. Dokja thinks even reincarnations must be under the effects of probability, but their power level is much too high. He observes that Nirvana seems physically weak and thinks he has invested everything into speed and psychic skills instead of physical skills. However, he wonders how he sets his skill level just right unless someone tips him off. Nirvana is about to rush and attack him when Jiwoo appears and throws an attack on him. She tells Dokja there is no hope for Soul if they get him. Nirvana calls her the King of Beauty and says she got away so quickly last time, which means she must have seen the error of her ways. However, seeing how she is fighting back and knowing well that she could end up dead must mean she has been somewhat enlightened. She asks Dokja to run away from there, but Nirvana reaches her in no time and uses his skill, Thought Infection, level 9. He makes her fall away and says he loves beautiful creatures so he won't kill her. Her people rush toward him to attack while he exclaims that the world is hell and the only place for them to live in is the present. He uses a skill that violently amplifies the target's desires to make them obsess about the present. He asks her if she wants to visit a luxury spa when her companions are dying and asks her to accept her desires. In the meantime, Dokja's bookmark update has been completed, and its efficiency has increased by 20% due to the update. He activates his personal skill, the Way of the Wind, and a large wave of wind appears there and attacks them. But Nirvana stays unharmed by the skill when Dokja reaches him with his blade and tries to attack him. He reacts on time and dodges his attack, but Dokja tries to attack him again. Suddenly, he uses his wind barrier and there is a huge explosion. Everyone is shocked at the pressure, while Nirvana asks how to use the skill, the Way of the Wind, and says he must be the person Neutral mentioned. Dokja smiles and says he is very famous, but his smile angers Nirvana, and he rushes toward him at full speed to attack. He touches Dokja's head and uses his skill, Thought Infection level 9. He laughs and asks him to live in the present and come to terms with his desires. But he is shocked that Dokja stays unaffected by his skill and says people are not prisoners of their desires, but they actually fight against them. He then emits a huge amount of pressure and a notification appears that the effect of the fourth wall skill has completely nullified the effects of the infection. Nirvana then shockingly asks him what trick he has used, and he replies that it's just the power of the story. He asks him to remember his lines and how strong or how weak the story decides someone. Dokja says it's his fault that he didn't invest any points into melee skills this time, and it serves him right for only going after Young-hyuk's weakness. Nirvana is surprised and says he knows his name, Dokja Kim, while he asks him if they are introducing themselves. He says he finally feels like talking. He gets up from the ground and says a few things. Nebulae warned him to watch out for Dokja Kim, and he didn't expect that he would run into him now. Dokja thinks he regained his calm quickly, which he expected from a reincarnator. He thinks about Nebulae and is sure he must have caught their attention. Nirvana asks him how he obtained such a powerful barrier, and Anna Croft is the only person impervious to his thought infection. Dokja is shocked after hearing her name and thinks she must have gotten to the reincarnation already. He thinks she would even go as far as to sell her soul to save the world. Nirvana asks him if he knows the prophet, and the constellation Demonic Judge of Fire shows interest in his conversation. He asks him multiple questions simultaneously and asks if he is also a regressor. Dokja thinks the filter on the spoilers should be lifted now, and constellations should find information on regressors and reincarnations. Nirvana is intrigued by him and says this is not easy since he has lived for hundreds of years. Dokja replies that he talks too much and will never get Young-hyuk to join him. Nirvana laughs and says he will gladly accept him into his church instead, and Dokja says he would have accepted that offer even a moment ago, but he is afraid he has to refuse now. He is notified that a constellation has recited Buddhist scriptures in penance and is curious about what he means. Dokja says it's because one of his supporters hates his supporting constellation's guts, and the constellation, prisoner of the golden headband, is expressing hostility towards Nirvana Mobus, supporting constellation. Nirvana asks him why the Monkey King is following him around, and he has made him even more curious to join him and Young-hyuk. Dokja again refuses, and he asks him if he isn't curious to know the world's secrets, and if he can even help him survive after this world has ended, regardless of whether he has failed the scenario. Dokja thinks it's quite an attractive offer, and Nirvana says he will allow him to become one with him. Dokja thinks he would definitely accept his offer if he weren't a reader. In the meantime, Nirvana has called many souls, and Dokja finds out that those are the faces of the people who have become one with Nirvana. He asks him to shut up and come to him, and Nirvana says if he refuses, then he will just have to take him by force. Dokja is against reincarnation since they have lived many lives repeatedly and should have a far superior sense of combat than he does. He will quickly catch on to his moves if he drags this fight out and ends up severely disadvantaged. He activates his personal skill, miniaturization level 1, and his body has decreased in size due to miniaturization's effect. He is also notified that his equipped items have been reduced in size to fit his miniaturized body, and the skill duration has been reduced to a low skill level. He runs toward him, and the maximum duration of miniaturization is 2 minutes. Nirvana makes his fun, saying he even knows petty tricks like this. He has chosen the 5th bookmark, Kyrgio's Rodgrame, and his physical traits have been confirmed to be similar to the selected character. With this, he activates his personal skill, Electrification level 10. Nirvana is coming toward him, but suddenly, his body is blown away from the side. He is shocked at this sudden attack, and Dokja says he should start praying that he will be born as a human again. But he is shocked that Nirvana is still alive after the attack while he is bleeding badly. No matter how powerful he is, there's no way that they are stronger than Kyrgios at this point in time. In the meantime, Nirvana uses a large amount of stigma, and Dokja thinks he shouldn't be able to use it because of the probability restriction. He shouts at him and says he has made him use his memories at a time like this. He uses the skill story payment and borrows the power of a constellation using the story he created as payment. He rushes toward him, saying he will be punished for daring to fight against the present in the most grueling way possible. Dokja jumps upon him and tries to attack him by breaking his wind barrier while he is just smiling at him. He is notified that the character, Nervan Mobius, has used the stigma, no ownership, level 7. Dokja is shocked because this is a stigma that lets the user forget a part of their memory to escape from danger. He has been notified of the constellation prisoner of the golden headband and is overjoyed by his victory. He has been gifted 10,000 coins. Suddenly, the people surrounding him look for their king and are surprised to see Dokja. They don't like his face and say he would be the ugliest king ever. Meanwhile, Jung-hyuk gets into consciousness and asks if he is alright, and he replies that it feels as if his muscles have been torn apart. He asks him about Nirvana, and he replies that he ran away. Jung-hyuk is angry at him since he let him get away, while he says he should have helped him at least. He asks him to hurry after them because their goal isn't to clear the scenario. He asks him why he let them go, and if they don't get them before the 10th scenario ends, Seoul will be run. Meanwhile, he receives a notification from the demonic judge of fire that they have come to their senses and want to explain why they are there. He remembers that Uriel is Huiwen's supporting constellation, but they are there instead of being with Huiwen, and they also have lost contact with her. He is notified that the demonic judge of fire needs his help and wonders what that means. He then goes to Jiwon, who seems to be a little conscious, and asks her if she knows where Huiwen is. But she can't respond, and he urges Jung-hyuk to protect him. He then focuses his consciousness and sinks slowly into sleep. He has gotten used to doing this now and needs to look for the voice calling out for him. He told them to think of him if something went amiss, and soon he heard Huiwen's voice calling for him. He acts in the third person, observing Viewpoint, and finds a place on fire. There is no doubt about it that it's Huiwen's hell flames ignition, and he is relieved that she is still alive. But he finds out that it isn't Huiwen's perspective he is seeing through. After a while, he finds Huiwen, who is under Nirvana's skill effect, and finds out that he must have gotten to her already. But he wonders about the person who called his name. After a while, he gets his answer when he sees Hyunseong there. The whole place is on fire, and Hyunseong reaches there looking for Huiwen. Dokja looks around and thinks they are not in a location where he can help them. But if he doesn't do anything, Hyunseong will be killed by Huiwen, who controls through infection. She is ready to attack him, while Dokja wonders what he should do now to save Hyunseong. He comes into consciousness through Jung-hyuk's punch, and he asks him what he is doing by falling asleep like this. He coughs badly and wonders if he just punched him to wake him up, and he asks him if he can hit him again, and this time harder than before. Yonghyuk is surprised at what he says, while Dokja asks him to kill him. He thinks a few sayings end up sticking with him, and there was such a saying for Hyunseong as well. For example, he heard his professors say during his freshman year in college that they must become creative and think outside the box. They need to become someone who can get up this moment and barge out of this auditorium. He asked them to go and look for something they really wanted to do, and Hyunseong wondered at the time how he was supposed to do that. The professor instructed them that they were born to be soldiers, and Dokja wondered how his life would have turned out if he hadn't heard the executive officer say that to him. For someone who found fitting into society and mingling with others difficult, the army was like a second home to him. When Hyunseong returned to the army, he was accepted as an officer, and the executive officer advised him to go by the book. No one would hold him accountable if he didn't know what to do. However, Dokja wonders what he is supposed to do at a time like this, and he doesn't have a book to guide him in a situation like this. Huiwen is forwarding toward Hyunseong, and he wonders what he should do or if he should fight with her. The people are burning there and calling them for help. Hyunseong asks her to snap out of a fit, and he calls Dokja into his mind and asks what he is supposed to do at a time like this. The constellation, Master of Steel, is silently watching him, and Hyunseong badly wants an answer from Dokja. Suddenly, he is shocked when he hears a voice from Dokja and wonders if he is hearing things. Dokja again calls him and asks if he can hear him, and he asks him to run away from there first. Huiwen is coming towards him, and Hyunseong starts running away. Dokja tells him they have two options: to kill Huiwen, who furiously tries to attack him, but he somehow dodges his attack. Hyunseong asks him if the second option is to keep running like this. He exclaims that he will go with a third option as always. But Dokja calls him and says there is no third option this time, and he is just looking at him shockedly. He thinks there is a third way, but it requires some time, and he activates the omniscient reader's viewpoint and finds out that the first person supporting the actor is currently unstable. He can't believe the person who is using Hellflame's ignition is Huiwen, and even if Hyunseong doesn't kill her now, her mana will end up overflowing and killing her. This is exactly what Nirvana has planned, and Hyunseong shouts at him and asks why he always has to be like that. He asks him how he can ask him to kill Huiwen, and Dokja thinks he didn't realize just how strong she was when she was an ally, but he can see for sure now that she is standing on the other side. Even if she doesn't use the time for judgment, she has demon slaying and can ruthlessly use Uriel's Hellflame ignition. In short, she is the most powerful one of the allies he has gathered, and he tries to attack Hyunseong again. He starts running again, but suddenly stops and refuses to accept such a solution. He uses his skill and tries to dodge her attack, and Dokja says if he runs, then at least one of them will be able to live. He tries to persuade him, saying no one will hold him accountable even if he runs away, but he refuses to run. Dokja thought he considered him as the standard he should strive for, and Dokja asked him to do as he said. His hands are melting with the fire, and he says he can't give up that easily, even if it means he will die there and now. Dokja is happy with his decision and says this was the third option he had in his mind. He thinks the third option wasn't something he could just order him to do, but it was something that Hyunseong had to decide for himself. It's a way of doing things that they have figured out without going by the book, and he wasn't sure that this would work. He still chose to go through with it because he sensed a daint bit of pity for Huiwen that Hyunseong had in his heart for her. Hyunseong thanks him for everything he has done so far, but Dokja says there is no need to thank him because they are only just getting started. He calls the constellation Master of Steel the most indomitable being of the star stream. He is notified that the Master of Steel is heeding his call, and Dokja thinks it is time he should answer him. He asks the constellation to give his incarnation a chance, but the Master of Steel remains silent. Dokja says he fears taking on the aftermath of probability, but he asks how long he will walk on eggshells around the other nebulae. He asks him if he is going just to keep watching until the scenario reaches an apocalypse, and he receives a reply that it's not the time to react for him. The constellation believes that Hyunseong won't be able to handle his story, and Dokja thinks he will bear it with him. The constellation, Master of Steel, is looking at him. He nods, and Dokja is notified that Hyunseong is preparing to evolve his attributes, and a story is required for an attribute evolution. Moreover, the constellation has granted putting his story to the test, and the story, Proof of Steel, has begun. Hyunseong activates his skill, the steel transformation, and is wearing steel armor on its body. Back then, everyone wondered why Hyunseong was called the Steel Blade since they had never seen him use any blade. Despite that, Hyunseong's nickname was the Steel Blade, but he never needed a blade because he himself was a sword. Only armor's first level is activated, which is powerful enough for him. Hyunseong is shocked that he is still alive, and Dokja says this is the real stigma he must master. He is notified that the chosen stigma can only be used by someone who has established a story. However, the problem is that the stigma's first level hasn't kicked in fully yet, and his steel transformation is incomplete. It is revealed that every supporting constellation provides its incarnation with a stigma, while some are simply bestowed upon them as gifts, and others have difficult conditions that must be met before they can be used. Hyunseong receives a notification that the first proof of steel begins, and Dokja thinks steel transformation is a difficult stigma to deal with. Its first condition is that true steel is born only after tens of thousands of quenches. Quenches is the process of cooling metal after heating it to a high temperature, and now he has to keep his head straight. Huiwen again throws fire on him, and with this, the constellation shows interest in the story. Hyoseong is in real pain while the demonic judge of fire is clasping their hands anxiously. Dokja is still with him and asks him to bear a little more, while Huiwen attacks him with her full power. He is notified that the temperature has exceeded standard values, and with this the quenching has begun. It is revealed that quenching is the foundation of making great steel, and in this story he needs to withstand an excess amount of heat until his body becomes as hard as steel. Dokja asks him to hold it for a while, and Huiwen's attacks are becoming stronger than before. They hear her voice saying that she can't forgive humans and that they all must die like her. She is currently under the influence of thought infection, and she has lost the power to reason. Dokja thinks Nirvana had surely done a number on her mind, and they rattle up all of her past traumas, starting with what happened at Jumho Station. Hyoseong can also hear her thinking, and he asks Dokja if this is one of his powers. He didn't realize Hyoseong could also hear the messages he gets from the omniscient reader's viewpoint. He apologizes to him for keeping it a secret from him, but he is a little embarrassed and asks him if he read his thoughts as well. Dokja changes the topic and says they need to try to overpower her first, but Hyoseong says it will end up hurting her. Dokja says it will hurt her only mentally, and just as expected of Hyoseong, they have the shorter end of the stick, and he is worried about her. The best way to go about this would be to either kill Nirvana or resolve Huiwen's traumas. The former is impossible right now, so the most likely option would be to go with the latter. He calls Dokja and asks him to try to overpower her, and says they will save her for sure. Huiwen attacks him again while he tries to call her, and is notified that Hyoseong has reached his mental capacity. He falls to the ground, and the constellation, Master of Steel, looks at his incarnation with pity. Dokja puts his hand on his shoulder and asks him to let him take control for a little while. He enters his body and is notified that his personal skill, the fourth wall, is shaking. First person, supporting actor Pav is in full effect, and Dokja feels so much pain in his skin and wonders if this is the pain Hyoseong had been enduring. He then calls Huiwen and says they will all die if they carry on like this, and Hyoseong will end up dying. She doesn't listen to him and attacks him again, while Dokja feels so much pain because his skin feels like burning. He has 3 more steps to go, and after 3 seconds, Hyoseong calls him and asks him to let him do this. He says he should be the one to do it, and he is notified that Steel will react to him. Huiwen reaches him to attack while he calls her name and grabs her hand. He then hugs her with his armor suit and constellation. The sudden display of camaraderie disconcerts the demonic judge of fire. There is so much pressure, and Hyoseong's armor suit is melting due to the high temperature. Suddenly, there is an explosion, and Huiwen shouts and tries to free herself. Hyoseong doesn't let her go. Soon, they transform into a steel block. Dokja is shocked to see the story of the first proof of steel being completed. After some time, it cracks, and they both get out of it, while Huiwen is unable to breathe. He apologizes to her and says he will let her go now. She hugs him again and thanks him for saving her life, and she asks him if there is anybody else with him there. Hyoseong says there is no one, and she asks him to hurry and get her out of this thing. Hyoseong asks her if something is wrong, but she calls Dokja and asks if he is listening. She reveals that Sangha is in danger right now. Conversely, Dokja's body awakes due to great shock and deactivates his omniscient reader's viewpoint level 3. He thinks something is wrong and wonders why his resurrection message is being displayed. He is notified that he can't receive the reward for omniscient reader's viewpoint level 3 since his connection to the first-person supporting actor Pav is unstable. Young-hyuk is staring at him and asks if he is dead, and he thinks he was never dead to begin with. He was just hit so hard that he almost died. He is angry at him because he said he would kill him, and wonders why he didn't do this. Young-hyuk calls him again and wonders if he should have just killed him earlier. He thinks Dokja has ruined everything, and this round has deviated greatly from what he used to know. He can use so little information and can't save the world like this. The leader of the Salvation Church defeated him because he used Time Layer for too long in the last round, and it was a mistake to train there for 100 years. He thinks he lost because his mentality had been damaged permanently during that time, or maybe it was because he failed to obtain the Absolute Throne, or maybe it would be best if he started all over again. Suddenly, Dokja wakes up and shouts at him, saying his punch hurts like hell. Young-hyuk asks him to remember that he asked him to hit him as hard as he could, and asks him if he managed to do what he was trying to do. He tells him the whole story, and Young-hyuk asks him what he will do now, and he replies that he hasn't thought about it yet, but things are looking up for them. Young-hyuk knows that a woman called Sangha must be important to him, so he must find her as soon as possible. He asks him if the leader of the Salvation Church is holding her captive, and he replies that things are looking very hopeful. He asks him why he keeps saying that and asks him to remember that they can save the world. Young-hyuk asks him what he is talking about, and Dokja gets embarrassed because he made it too obvious. He guesses that Nirvana wouldn't have laid a hand on Sangha if they were the Nirvana he knows of, and Young-hyuk shockingly asks him how he knows about reincarnation. Meanwhile, Jiwon comes to them and says they both seem much closer now, and Dokja thinks she has appeared at a perfect time. He asks her about her health, and she thanks him for saving his life. Dokja says he might need her help and asks if she can find all his friends who have been scattered before they become brainwashed into joining the Salvation Church. After some time, she takes him to a place where Pildo has built his private property. He tells him that he wants to stay there, and fortunately, Dokja is relieved that everyone is nearby. Suddenly, some people appear there and call Young-hyuk by the name of Supreme King and request him to accept them. They say they have heard so much about him, but Dokja tells them that the Supreme King isn't feeling too good and asks them to get lost from there. Soon, he is embarrassed to hear that they call him the Ugly King, but it looks like that Ugly King is stronger. Jihai makes fun by calling him an ugly king, while the kids try to console him, saying he is still handsome. Suddenly, they hear a noise from the side, and a large beast appears from there. Young-hyuk says it's a tier 6 giant monster, and Dokja never expected that there would be a scenario there. He thinks the 7th scenario, monster hunting, was a special scenario, opened for new and old incarnations who didn't get to go to Peace Land. He wonders if a tier 6 monster existed in the 7th scenario, and Jiwon tells them the 7th scenario is already over. She tells them they must have come while the rewards were being calculated, and it was all over by then. She tells them that the leader of the Salvation Church received the highest reward, and Jihai asks them where that thing came from. Dokja says the monsters don't go around in packs starting from tier 6 and wonders what they actually are. They are large in number, and everyone, including Young-hyuk, Jihai, and Dokja, attacks and hits them. Pildo also uses his skill Private Property, while Dokja asks others to run toward a side. He feels something is strange there, and something like this doesn't happen in the 3rd round of the novel. He is notified that the constellation Secretive Plotter is to see his reasoning power in action. He seems to be missing something important and tries to think while fighting the monsters. He tries to remember when this scenario appeared in the novel. He is notified that his memory is enhanced due to his personal attributes. There is an announcement for all the incarnations of the Soul Dome, and the voice asks them if the monsters must have startled them. They informed everyone that the next scenario had begun, which was totally unexpected. A new dokkaebi appears there and says it will not run by the old dokkaebi since it's an automated scenario. Everyone is notified that a new main scenario has arrived, with the clear condition that they have to survive the onslaught of monsters by cautious as the level of the monsters increases every 4 hours. Dokkaebi reveals that Tier 6 is just the beginning, and after 4 hours, Tier 5 monsters will come, and Tier 4 monsters will come after another 4 hours. A man shouts at him and says they can't run a scenario like that, while it doesn't state the time limit. Dokkaebi replies that there isn't such a thing as a time limit, and it's because all of them have gotten so strong. Dokja thinks the sudden appearance of Nirvana, the leader of the Salvation Church, means Yoonhyuk and his group had gotten much stronger than in the third round of the novel. He remembers something like this happened in TWSA once, and Dokkaebi says the Korean incarnations have gotten so strong to break the balance. This scenario activates automatically when the incarnations of a certain dome become too strong. He revealed that there are only 2 ways to get through the scenario, and the first one is the death of half of the incarnations in Seoul Deom, and the current number of incarnations is around 1 lakh. Dokkaebi says so many of them are still alive, and the good thing is that there are even more. The people shout at him since he is just asking them to die while he tells them about the second condition. The second condition is the death of the strongest incarnation, Seoul Dome, and they wonder who must be the strongest incarnation. They ask Dokkaebi about who is that person, but he refuses to tell them that. He exclaims that telling them his name would make it no fun, and he is sure whoever is the strongest knows who they are. He says goodbye and asks them to search happily. The people wonder about the most muscular man among them, so the Dokkaebi gives them a hint. He gives them a hint that the 10th strongest incarnation in Seoul Dome is currently Naval Commander Ji-Hai Lee. She doesn't seem happy to hear that she is the 10th strongest, and Dokkaebi disappears, wishing them good luck. Yoonhyuk also seems worried and thinks everything has gone wrong, because it's finally come to the point where a scenario he doesn't know about has appeared. He can't think of a way to correct this and thinks of regressing again and starting a new life. Dokja is disappointed at thinking of his thoughts and feels that if he does this, then what will happen to him? After some time, they have killed the first wave of the beasts, and the second wave will appear after 4 hours. It was just the first wave, but it ended up killing 1/10 of the population there. Blood and corpses of beasts and people are everywhere, while Yoonhyuk is still trying to process the situation. Now there are 90,531 incarnations left. Dokja comes to Yoonhyuk and asks him to talk for a moment. He again activates his personal skills to check his character profile, but he can't find his supporting constellation. He knows the reason and thinks that even TWSA never revealed who Yoonhyuk's supporting constellation was until the end. He hoped it would be shown in the epilogue, but unfortunately, he didn't get to read TWSA's epilogue. He knows about his constellation that he is more immune to the rules of probability than any other constellation he knows, and has the power to spin the wheel of time to trick the different constellations. He has a constellation that never gave him any other stigma than regression until TWSA ended. Yoonhyuk asks him if there is a way to kill Nirvana, but he asks him to take a little break first, saying this place has a great view. Yoonhyuk asks him if he is playing any tricks with him, but Dokja replies he is just enjoying the view. He says it's all bound to perish someday, and he tells him that he still has to protect something. He thinks Yoonhyuk's goal is to stop the end of the world, and he could always give up on his world to achieve his goal. Dokja says he thinks regress means death is meaningless to him, but Yoonhyuk says he doesn't know anything about life and death. However, he is shocked when Dokja asks him not to fool himself into thinking that things will improve if he keeps repeating everything. He says he can do better than now when he reaches his 4th round and asks him to remember the theater dungeon. If he hadn't shown up then, he would have regressed again. Yoonhyuk interrupts him and says that with repeated regression, things do get better. There were many unexpected incidents this round, but the next round is sure to go much better. Dokja asks him if he has become more privy to what is to come in the future. He thinks this is a pathetic belief that things would get better with each regression, and the impulse to give up when something goes wrong, no matter how small it is, are the symptoms of regressor's depression. Dokja understands his thinking and says things could improve if he regresses 10 or even 20 times. He will experience more scenarios and know more about the future. But the real problem is that when he has finally managed to save the world, he asks him if he can say that he saved the world. He asks him if he can say that when he has regressed hundreds of times. Yoonhyuk suddenly realizes something and starts staring at Dokja while he asks him if he still has nightmares. He tells him that salvation won't come to him, even if he manages to save the world, because the worlds he abandoned will return to him the moment he saves this world. In this chapter, he instructs him to do his best and says Yeseong was broken because she had to wander those countless years and a worse fate awaits him. Young-hyuk is just staring at him shockingly, and Dokja asks him to ask himself how much he has changed from when he first started. He again adds that abandoning this round won't make the next round any better, and it might be the case that this world he is about to leave could be the only one where he can live to see it end as a human being. He is notified that Young-hyuk's mental state has recovered a little. Suddenly, they hear some noises from behind, and they see Ji-hae and Pildo fighting each other when they turn behind. She is curious about what they are discussing and asks why he is the only one to hear them. He forbids her from stepping in on the conversation among men. They have caught them, and the constellation, demonic judge of fire's eyes are flashing. Young-hyuk tells them they are coming up with a plan for this scenario. He explains that the most powerful incarnation must die in order for this scenario to end, and Dokja wonders why he is looking at him as he is saying that. Ji-hae says they were also talking about that as well, and asks them who the strongest incarnation is. Young-hyuk replies it's him, and Dokja thinks someone as proud as him would never consider to believe that he is the strongest. Suddenly, he remembers something. If the scenario ends when the strongest incarnation dies, and he believes he is the strongest here, he will kill himself. Young-hyuk says the scenario can be stopped if he dies there, and Dokja thinks his regressor's depression is actually starting to look kind of cool. He asks him how he can be so sure that he is the strongest, and says he is also among the strongest. Ji-hae laughs at him and asks if he is serious when he calls himself the strongest. He then says Nirvana can be stronger than Young-hyuk, and they had trouble fighting them earlier. Young-hyuk tells Ji-hae that they and he look like opposites, and she is surprised to hear that someone is actually stronger than her master. Ji-won asks them what they think they base this ranking on, and says they may mean someone who would actually win in a fight. Dokja says they have some way of rating an incarnation's overall combat power, but that could change once a fight occurs between parties. She recalls the dokkaebi from earlier saying that whoever was the strongest would know themselves. They ask each other if Young-hyuk did anything unusual happen, or if maybe a dokkaebi told him something. Dokja says they don't know anything for certain, and no one there wants Young-hyuk to die. It would be wise for them to assume that Nirvana is the strongest there and join forces to fight them. Ji-won asks him what they will do if it is revealed that Young-hyuk is the strongest, and he replies that they will worry about that later. After some time, they locate the Church of the Savior in Gangbuk, but the security is tight there, so they won't be able to sneak in, and they have way more men than them. Dokja says they won't go to them, but they will be the ones coming to them. Ji-won asks him how this will happen, and if they will even fall for it, and he says there is no way they would do something that doesn't benefit them. Dokja thinks it will be the most logical thing to do, but Nirvana cannot be understood with logic. 4 hours have passed, and the monsters are coming from outside of Seoul, so there must be a gate in that area, and the monsters will get stronger at a 4-hour interval. So, the time they have left is 8 hours at most, and he has to make Nirvana and Young-hyuk fight each other. He has purchased 10 main scenario numbers, 8 special loot boxes, and new scenarios special loot boxes. It's a loot box with a criminal law drop rate that contains SSS-grade weapons and skills. This is the item that the dokkaebi have created to cheat the foolish constellations out of their money. Gil-young asks him if it is just like the thing he finds in games, and they get a random item when they open it. He then calls everyone to gather around and gives them one to lighten the mood. Surprisingly, Ji-won asks him if he will just provide them for free. He says they can keep the main items from the boxes and give him the minor items like the consumables they get. Gil-young, what will he do if he gets an SSS grade item? Pildo says the chance of that is almost zero. Young-hyuk picks an item and says if he is thinking of fighting Nirvana with an item he gets from this. He calls his idea pathetic, and Dokja thinks he still takes a box. Yuseong comes to him with a sad face, and Dokja gives her 2 boxes since he is his incarnation. He believes this is the first present that Yeseong has ever received and thinks he should have treated her better. He then asks everyone to open the box and think of it as taking a breather. He was notified that he had used the special main scenario number 8 loot box. Young-hyuk and Seolhwa have obtained Elaine Forest Essence. Ji-hae obtained useful boots, and others also received some minor objects. Dokja knew that they would all get E-grade items and consumables. Soon, everyone was shocked to see that Yuseong had breached the 0.1% drop rate, and she had obtained an SSS grade item, Ancient Beasts' Fruit. They are shocked to see this. Young-hyuk says she has hit the jackpot, and Dokja thinks it's the rarest of items to drop by Zilliton 1% chance. He is still shocked that she got this item, which is the best item Yuseung could hope for since she can use it. If they feed this fruit to a beast that can't be tamed, they won't have any trouble taming it. If she could use it on a beast that can evolve beyond Tier 1, the Yuseung of this round could grow even stronger than the Yuseung of the 41st round. She asks him if she can only use this on beasts, and he surprisingly asks why she is asking such a question. Jihai asks him why he gave out all those boxes, and he asks them to give him all the consumables they got while opening those boxes. He has obtained 4 megaphones, dome channels, and 4 general channels. Young-hyuk may now know what he is about to do, but there is no way they would show themselves just because they taunt them. Dokja says it will depend on what they say to them. On the other hand, Nirvana is in the temple meditating, and it is said that his stigma and succession consume a large amount of probability. They can only use succession if they give their fables as a tribute to the constellations in return for their probability. Through his meditation, he has obtained a new skill, and after this, he realizes that he overworked himself and has given away too many fables. It's not that he doesn't miss the past that he has lost, but he can't cling himself to the past. The past is already gone, and the future is yet to come. He then turns toward a room where he has Sangha with another girl. He asks the girl if they should get started. He has used his technique on Sangha and he skillfully controls her. The girl asks him when he will release the skill he used on this child, and he replies that it's not up to him to release it and that she has to do it herself. He calls her foolish and says all she has to do is declare that she will live in the present, but she has resisted it with all her might. The girl says the value of the past differs for them since they live such short lives. Nirvana says it is exactly because they live such short lives that they must learn the importance of the present. The girl asks him not to judge her by her present. She already has enough. She says to him that he is actually the one who is oblivious to the present since he has reincarnated countless times. They both stare at each other, and Nirvana asks her not to forget that he only lets her live until her stories have lost value. Moreover, he needs information from HWE, and she asks him what he wants to know. She asks him about the incarnation of Dokja Kim, and she replies that she doesn't know him. Nirvana says there is no use in feigning ignorance, and he already knows he is her son. The neutral told him already, and she replied that they had lived apart since he was young. She has no idea what kind of life he has lived until now, and Nirvana uses his skill and says they will go through his life. He keeps his hand on her head and asks her to open up her memory. Otherwise, he will kill Sangha. He exclaims that she has been giving in to such cliché threats all this time, and this is how they humans are. The woman agrees to listen to him and asks him to do whatever he wants. He then uses his personal skill, activates being and causation level 6, and sees through her memories. He sees through Dokja and wonders how a mere human may have access to restricted information of the future, and thinks this must be Dokja's true nature. He calls her a pitiful mother and says she lied to her child, and she dogmatically leads her son onto a path full of lies. The woman says he doesn't stand a chance against her son, and Nirvana says he will give her that he is an exciting incarnation. Nirvana says he was just someone who could force him to use succession, but he is only a human. On the other hand, Dokja uses speakers and tests them out. They are trying to connect with the church where Nirvana stays, and Dokja says he is requesting a duel with the church leader of the Savior. He tells him the time and location, 2 in the evening at Gwanghwamun. He joyfully tells him that his opponent will be the Supreme King, Young-hyuk, and they are 2 people who are most likely to be the strongest there and will fight to save Seoul's dome from certain doom. He also asks him not to return from this duel if he truly lives in the present. Nirvana thinks he is using the present as an excuse and uses the megaphone so everyone can hear. He must have wanted to set up a duel that he couldn't afford to refuse as the leader of the Salvation Church. Dokja's mother smiles and says he is strong and wise, and he also knows what he needs and what it is that he is good at. Meanwhile, Dokja again announces that he knows that accepting this duel isn't a part of his master plan, but if he shows up now, then he will give him the chase to become one with Young-hyuk. Nirvana is shocked that Dokja knows about his master plan, and his mother taunts him, saying he doesn't stand a chance against her son. At the same time, Ji-won and Ji-hai are shocked because they didn't expect them to accept the duel this easily. Dokja feels a headache because of the announcement. Nirvana left as soon as they got their reply. Suddenly, Younghyuk rushes toward him and punches his face forcefully, while Dokja thinks he is as strong as he is stupid. After some time, he takes a potion and asks everyone to go, and Gilyong says it looks like they can all fight together this time. He thinks Nirvana must have acquired a new skill through succession, and they won't be as easy to beat as before. Younghyuk also prepares accordingly, so there is no telling who would win. However, their fight isn't the problem right now. The real issue is the message going off in his head. He is notified that he is the strongest incarnation of Soul, and he wonders what he should do now. They are going toward Gwangwumun,